60 years old and left to die under the burning desert sun, the Apache woman believed her story had ended. But when a silent cowboy crossed her path and offered more than just shelter, offered her a place in his world, neither of them could have imagined how deeply their fates would intertwine, or how their union would challenge everything the desert town thought it knew about love, survival, and dignity. The desert stretched endlessly, a land of red stone and shimmering heat, where every shadow promised either mercy or menace. On the hardpan, far from the nearest road or trail, lay a figure so still she might have been mistaken for part of the ancient earth itself. Her name was Ada, and at 60 she was invisible to most, a life measured by service, loss, and, in the end, abandonment. The day she was left, the air was cruel. Ada's wrists were bruised from the leather ties that had bound her to the wagon's side. Her faded cotton dress caked with dust and the salt of old tears. Her tribe had spoken little as they drove her out, but their eyes said enough. She was too old, too slow, a mouth to feed when lean years pressed in. There was no ceremony, no words of thanks or mourning, only the hush of a wind that seemed to carry every secret she'd ever kept away into the wasteland. But Ada refused to beg, even as the sun climbed higher and her mouth grew dry. She knelt in the shade of a crumbling bluff, back straight, eyes shut, her breath steady, as if willing herself invisible. She remembered a life once rich with laughter, children's games beneath the cottonwoods, the low hum of her husband's songs now long gone. She remembered too the slow erasure, faces lost to fever, to hunger, to the ceaseless demands of a world that had never been gentle to women like her. So when the horse's hoofbeats broke the silence, Ada did not stir. It was only when the shadow lingered, unmoving, that she opened her eyes to see a man perhaps a decade younger than herself, with quiet eyes and a weathered hat pulled low. He did not speak at first, did not demand her story or offer empty comfort. He simply dismounted, set down his canteen and placed it within her reach. Ada looked up, suspicion warring with exhaustion. The man nodded once, slow and respectful. "You need water," he said softly, his voice carrying no judgment, only the truth. "And maybe a place that remembers your name." Ada hesitated, pride and fear locked in her chest. But something in the stranger's calm presence, the way he waited, not rushing her, not turning away, unlocked a door inside her she thought had closed forever. With trembling hands, she took the canteen and drank, never looking away from the cowboy who, without a word, was about to change the course of her life. The cowboy's name was Eli, a man whose presence was like the desert wind, silent but constant, shaping everything without ever being seen at work. He watched as Ada finished the water, her fingers trembling just enough to reveal the fatigue that pride could not hide. When she handed the canteen back, Eli didn't question her. Instead, he knelt, examining the bruises on her wrists, the faded lines in her palms, the deep, old scars of a woman who'd labored her entire life. He pulled a thin blanket from his saddle, draped it around her shoulders, and said, "The nights get cold out here, even in summer." Ada clutched it close, startled by how long it had been since anyone offered her warmth for no reason but kindness. She watched him move with unhurried purpose, checking the horizon, tending to his horse, gathering dry wood for a fire, as if he'd always planned to make this place a temporary camp. For a while, neither spoke. The wind pressed softly at their backs, carrying the scent of creosote and old memories. Eli's story was one of distance and dignity, a man who lived on the outskirts of town by choice. He'd seen enough cruelty to recognize it, enough loneliness to honor its presence in others. His own homestead was 3 miles east, a single-room shack with a garden grown wild and a barn in need of repair. He hadn't expected company, much less the kind that came in the form of a woman discarded by her own people. Yet, when he found Ada, he didn't see a burden. He saw someone as rootless as himself. They spent the first night in silence. Ada curled on one side of the fire, Eli tending the flames on the other. She did not ask why he helped her. He did not ask why she had been left. As dawn bled pink across the stones, Ada woke to the sharp ache in her back and the warmth of the blanket still around her. Eli was already up, frying cornmeal in a battered pan, humming a tune that sounded older than the hills. When he handed her a tin plate, Ada hesitated, then ate slowly, savoring each bite. The meal was plain, but to her it tasted of mercy. After breakfast, Eli packed up their camp. "Can you ride?" he asked gently, gesturing to his horse. Ada hesitated, her body stiff and sore, but pride lifted her chin. She had ridden before as a girl and as a mother, long before her knees turned brittle and her hands grew thick from work. With his help, she mounted, and Eli led the way through a wash of golden light, the heat rising in gentle waves off the sand. As they traveled, Ada's story began to emerge, not in the way of women who gossip, but in fragments. She spoke of children buried young, a husband lost to winter's fever, the tribe's slow thinning as hunger gnawed at every edge of life. She did not speak of her shame, nor of the moment she'd been driven out. But Eli could read between the silences. He responded with his own small confessions: a brother lost to gambling, a farm that had nearly gone under twice, a lifetime of keeping his own company because trusting others had rarely gone well. By the time they reached Eli's homestead, the sun was high, casting hard shadows across the yard. The shack was humble but clean. A row of faded quilts hung from a line. There was a trough of water for the horse and a patch of green where corn fought for survival in the dust. Eli helped Ada down, his hands strong but gentle, and guided her to a rocking chair on the porch. "Rest here. I'll see to things inside," he said. She sat, feeling the chair creak beneath her, eyes tracing every inch of this new world. For the first time in days, maybe months, Ada let her mind wander. She watched Eli move through his routines, fixing a shutter, feeding the horse, bringing her another cup of water. It was a strange comfort, the way he moved without expectation, without the threat of pity or obligation. That night, as they sat together beneath a sky painted in stars, Ada spoke again, her voice barely more than a whisper. "Why did you help me?" she asked. Eli considered her for a long moment. "Because I know what it's like to be left behind," he replied. "And because I know strength when I see it, even when the world calls it weakness." Ada looked away, blinking hard against the sting of tears. "Most men wouldn't have stopped," she said. He nodded. "Most men ain't lived long enough to know what really matters." They sat in silence as the night grew cool, the world shrinking down to the two of them and the steady rhythm of breathing and hope. Ada felt something begin to thaw inside her, a slow, persistent warmth that had nothing to do with the fire, and everything to do with the quiet promise in Eli's gaze, a promise that, here, she was neither forgotten nor alone. But as the moon drifted higher, a coyote howled in the distance, and Ada's thoughts turned to the tribe that had cast her out, the wounds that would not heal quickly, the eyes that might never see her again. She wondered if peace was possible, or if the past would always threaten to rise like the desert wind and carry her away. Eli understood, almost without words, that the journey Ada was on was not merely from one patch of desert to another, but from a life of invisible pain toward the hope of belonging. He didn't push her to talk, nor did he hover. He worked through his morning as he always did, feeding the horse, carrying water, mending a fence, but with subtle shifts in his rhythm, always keeping Ada within sight, never letting her feel unwelcome or in the way. Ada, for her part, struggled with the simple acts of daily life in a new place. The world she'd known had been ruled by routine and repetition, but here, even the familiar felt different. When she tried to help by sweeping the porch, her back twinged painfully, and Eli gently took the broom from her hands. "You don't have to prove anything," he said, his voice so soft it surprised her. Ada nodded, embarrassed, but she could not deny the relief in her muscles. They settled into a pattern as the days drifted by. Ada cooked what she could, simple stews of beans and wild herbs, bread that sometimes came out dense and sometimes soft. Eli never complained, and often brought her odd treasures from his work outside: wild onions, a handful of berries, a stray egg from the neighbor's chickens. In return, Ada began to mend his shirts, her thick fingers finding purpose in tiny stitches, her pride stitched quietly into every seam. One afternoon, as Ada sat on the porch darning a hole in Eli's sleeve, a wagon rolled slowly down the distant trail. Dust billowed up behind it, and she tensed, old fears surfacing as memories of the tribe's rejection flashed through her mind. Eli saw her face tighten and put a calming hand on her shoulder. "Don't worry," he said quietly. "That's just Mrs. Rawlings. Brings mail and gossip, not trouble." Mrs. Rawlings, a stout, lively woman with keen eyes, stopped to chat, dropping off a few supplies and a bundle of old letters. She glanced at Ada with a mixture of curiosity and warmth, and after a brief pause, introduced herself with no trace of condescension. "Heard you've got company, Eli," she said. "Glad to see you've finally got some sense." Eli just smiled, a rare twinkle in his eyes, and Ada, unused to kindness from strangers, managed a hesitant smile in return. After Mrs. Rawlings left, Ada watched the dust settle and felt something shift inside her. The encounter was brief, but it was the first time since being cast out that she felt seen for something other than her body or her history. That night, as she lay in the small bed Eli had prepared beside the hearth, she allowed herself a sliver of hope. Maybe here she could become someone new, not the fat burden her tribe had called her, but a woman valued for her presence, her strength, her kindness. But healing is not a straight road, and Ada's wounds inside and out did not vanish just because she'd found shelter. There were nights when she woke to the echo of voices, the cruel laughter of men who'd mocked her as a girl, the sharp memory of the moment her own mother turned away, silent and complicit as the elders declared Ada unfit for any man. On those nights, she lay rigid, clutching the edge of her blanket, certain she would never belong anywhere. Eli noticed the change in her, the way her laughter faded and her movements grew cautious. He didn't pry. Instead, one evening, he left a small gift by her bedside, a carving of a running horse, whittled from juniper wood. When Ada found it, she wept quietly, overwhelmed by the gentle recognition. The horse, she realized, was not graceful or slim. Its belly was round, its stance strong and steady, a reflection of herself as she was. Imperfect, powerful, surviving. The next morning, Ada carried the little horse in her pocket as she helped Eli in the garden, pulling weeds and planting new seeds for the coming season. As the sun rose, Eli finally spoke, his voice calm but serious. "Ada, you know you don't owe me anything for taking you in." She looked at him, startled, searching for the catch in his words. But there was none, only quiet sincerity. "I was left behind once, too," he continued. "It doesn't matter what folks say or why. Out here, what matters is what you build for yourself." Ada listened, her heart pounding. "You think I can build anything?" she asked, unable to mask the tremor in her voice. Eli met her gaze. "I know you can, but you've got to believe it, too." It was a simple truth, but for Ada it landed with the force of a revelation. She stood there, hands in the earth, feeling the sun warm her back and the sting of old shame slowly, quietly, beginning to loosen. But that afternoon, as Ada gathered laundry by the creek, she heard something that made her blood run cold. Voices in the distance, angry and familiar. She ducked behind a boulder, heart racing. Could the tribe have sent someone to find her? Or was trouble coming from somewhere else entirely? Ada's breath caught in her throat as the voices grew nearer. She pressed herself lower behind the rock, her mind spinning through every possibility. The sharp cadence of the Apache tongue, mixed with rough English, confirmed her worst fears. Members of her old tribe had come this far, and they weren't alone. From her hiding place, she could make out the figures of two young men she recognized, cousins by blood but strangers by loyalty. With them was a white man on horseback, thin and sharp-eyed, his hat pulled low. The men approached Eli's small house with a swaggering confidence, calling out in loud, mocking tones. Ada's heart pounded as she watched Eli step out onto the porch, hat in hand, face calm but wary. The oldest of her cousins, Koso, called out, "We're looking for a woman. Fat, slow, maybe limping. She doesn't belong out here." The words struck like stones, but Eli's jaw tightened only slightly. "I haven't seen anyone matching that," Eli replied, his voice flat and measured. The white man slid from his horse, casting a cold glance over the yard. "You're sure?" "Wouldn't want any trouble, mister. Tribe says she stole food, says she's dangerous." Ada nearly cried out at the lie. her body trembling with rage and shame. In the past, she would have cowered, certain she deserved whatever accusations they hurled. But now, with the memory of Eli's quiet faith and the little wooden horse still warm in her pocket, something different surged within her. Anger, yes, but also defiance. The search party moved around the yard, peering through the barn and kicking at the chicken coop. Koso spat in the dirt. "She'll turn up. When she does, we'll bring her home ourselves." There was a threat in his tone, but Eli stood his ground. "No one here but me. If I see her, I'll let you know." The men lingered, but when it became clear Eli would not be intimidated, they eventually rode off, their laughter echoing bitterly in the empty space behind them. Only after the sound of hooves faded did Ada emerge from her hiding spot, her hands shaking. Eli met her halfway, concern shadowing his eyes. "That your people?" he asked quietly. Ada nodded, tears stinging her eyes. "They lied. They said I stole, that I—" Her words choked off as shame threatened to smother her again. Eli shook his head gently. "Don't matter what they say. You're not theirs anymore." Ada nodded, forcing herself to believe it. For the first time, she realized her story was no longer in their hands, but their visit left a wound in the peace they'd begun to build. Ada grew more withdrawn, haunted by the knowledge that she was being hunted, marked as a criminal by the only people who'd ever claimed her as kin. At night, she lay awake, eyes fixed on the rafters, wondering if she'd ever be free from their judgment. Days passed, and Eli did his best to anchor her. He spoke softly in the evenings, telling stories about his own family, how his mother had been shunned for marrying a stranger, how his father had disappeared during a harsh winter, never returning. "People are small-minded," he said one night. "They find someone different and make them pay for it. But difference is the only way anything ever changes." Ada found comfort in his words, but the anxiety lingered. She busied herself with chores, tending the garden, sewing patches onto Eli's old shirts, and learning how to read from a battered primer he'd found in a trunk. The lessons were slow, but Ada felt her mind stretching, a quiet pride blooming each time she recognized a word. One morning, as Ada hung laundry in the early sun, a rider approached. This time, a young boy from a neighboring farm, eyes wide with worry. "Mr. Eli, my ma sent me. Says she saw men camped by the big oak, saying they'd be back tonight. Said they're looking for a woman. Apache. Heavy set." The boy looked at Ada, realization dawning in his eyes. "They mean you, don't they?" Eli didn't hesitate. "Go back to your ma. Tell her thank you, and to stay inside tonight." The boy nodded and galloped off, leaving a cloud of dust behind. Ada turned to Eli, fear creeping in. "I can leave. I don't want to bring trouble." But Eli cut her off, his voice firm for the first time. "You're not running again. Not for them, not for anyone. If they come, I'll face them. You've got just as much right to peace as any soul alive." That evening, as darkness crept across the land, Ada and Eli sat side by side in the dim light of the kitchen. Ada's hands trembled, but she forced herself to eat, knowing strength would be needed for whatever was to come. Eli loaded his old rifle, placing it within reach but not in view. As the first distant shouts echoed through the night, Ada's fear shifted to something harder. She gripped the little horse in her pocket and whispered, "I am not what they say. Not anymore." Outside, torchlight flickered, and angry voices demanded the door be opened. Eli glanced at Ada, gave a reassuring nod, and stepped toward the threshold. The shouting grew louder as Eli stood in the narrow hallway, back straight, one hand hovering near the old rifle he'd laid across a chair. Ada pressed herself against the kitchen wall, breath tight in her chest. Shadows from the torches danced through the window, painting wild shapes over the floor. Every instinct told her to run, to flee out the back and disappear into the night. But something steadier, deeper, kept her rooted. Eli's words, his trust, the promise she'd made to herself. The front door rattled as a heavy fist pounded. "We know she's in there, Cowboy. No point hiding her. Tribe wants her back." Koso's voice, unmistakable in its taunting edge, rang out across the yard. Ada could hear the white man muttering, his accent thick with contempt. We don't want trouble, just the girl. Bring her out and no one gets hurt." Eli didn't open the door. Instead, he spoke through the thick wood, his tone calm but unyielding. "You've got no right to her. She hasn't done anything wrong. If you want to talk, do it in the morning, with the sheriff present." Silence followed. A dangerous, simmering silence broken only by the restless shifting of horses outside and the low crackle of the kitchen stove. Ada moved to the window, careful to stay hidden. She saw Koso and the others clustered near the porch, their faces twisted with anger and resentment. The white man spat in the dirt and shook his head. "Last chance, Eli. After this, we won't be so polite." He raised his torch, and for a moment, Ada's heart froze. Sure, they'd set fire to the house. But Eli stood his ground. "I said what I said. You come in here tonight. There'll be trouble for everyone." His words weren't shouted, but something in their quiet certainty made even Koso hesitate. The men argued in low voices, then finally mounted their horses and rode off into the darkness, their threats lingering like smoke. Eli turned back inside, face pale but jaw set. Ada could see his hands shaking, though he tried to hide it. "You did it," she whispered, unable to believe they'd gone. "For tonight, maybe. They'll be back and next time might not be so easy." Ada nodded, feeling both grateful and terrified. The house felt smaller now, every sound amplified, every shadow a threat. They didn't sleep much that night. Ada lay on her cot, fingers gripping the edge of the blanket, replaying the scene over and over. Each time she pictured Eli standing firm against the men who'd called her worthless, a little more of her shame burned away. She saw herself through his eyes, not as a burden but as someone worth protecting. At dawn, Eli was already up, boiling coffee and checking the yard. "They left tracks headed east," he reported quietly, pouring Ada a cup and pushing a slice of bread toward her. "They might come back with more, or try something else. You need to be ready." Ada nodded, determination kindling in her chest. "I will. I'm tired of running, Eli. If they come, I won't hide." For the next few days, they worked side by side, preparing for whatever might come. Eli repaired the back fence, reinforced the door, and kept the rifle close. Ada helped gather water, stacked wood, and did her best to push the fear aside. As they moved together through the routine of the ranch, a fragile but growing sense of partnership began to form. Ada wasn't just a guest. She was part of the home, part of the defense. One afternoon, as they mended a broken gate, Eli paused, wiping sweat from his brow. "You know, you're tougher than anyone gives you credit for." Ada shrugged, but a shy smile crept across her lips. "They never saw me, only what they wanted to see." Eli knelt to adjust the latch, glancing up at her. "I see you, Ada, all of you. Not what they say, not what they call you. Just you." The words were simple, but they sank deep, carving out a space in Ada that had never existed before. That evening, as the sun dipped below the horizon, a distant dust cloud signaled riders on the main road. Ada and Eli watched from the porch, hearts pounding. But this time, it was the sheriff, a burly, no-nonsense man with weathered hands and a careful gaze. "Heard about your visitors," he said. "You want trouble, you call me. No one gets taken from this ranch against their will, not while I'm sheriff." Ada felt a wave of relief, but she also knew nothing was guaranteed. Still, for the first time, she believed she had a chance, not just to survive, but to belong. That night, as Eli locked the door and checked the windows, Ada caught her own reflection in the glass. For the first time, she saw not the fat girl everyone had scorned, but a woman who had chosen her place, her home, and who would fight to keep it. As she climbed into bed, the little wooden horse clutched in her hand, Ada whispered a silent promise to herself. "I will not go back to being what they said. I will build a life here no matter what comes." The days that followed felt like living in the pause between lightning and thunder. Ada found herself listening for hoofbeats in the distance, for voices raised in anger, but the world outside the ranch stayed quiet. Tension hummed beneath every chore, every meal, but life went on, because it had to. She rose with Eli each morning, her body still aching from the desert ordeal but her spirit steadier than before. They worked together in a rhythm that was both new and strangely natural. Ada swept the porch, fed the hens, and helped repair a broken fence line, her hands growing stronger, her steps more confident. Eli, for his part, taught her the names of each horse, showed her how to bridle and feed them, how to tell a good saddle from one about to give out. "You pick things up fast," he observed one morning as she cinched the belly strap on the gentlest mare. "Reckon you've got a knack for animals." Ada smiled, trying to hide the pride that bloomed in her chest. "Better with animals than people, most days." Eli laughed, a low, warm sound. "Me too. Guess that's why we both ended up out here." Yet, even as Ada started to settle in, reminders of her past were never far behind. Some nights she'd wake in the darkness, sweat cooling on her skin, haunted by dreams of the tribe, of whispered insults, of the elders' cold verdict, of the day her own mother turned away. She'd sit up, heart racing, and see only the small comfort of Eli's dog, Curly curled at her feet, and the pale moonlight on the ranch floor. In those hours, it was hard not to wonder if all of this, the house, the safety, the slow-growing sense of belonging, could be snatched away by a single knock on the door. One evening, Eli found her on the back steps, eyes fixed on the horizon as dusk settled over the ranch. "Bad dreams?" he asked, sitting beside her. Ada nodded, pulling her knees to her chest. "I keep waiting for them to come back, my own people. They called me too much. Too big, too wild, too stubborn. I was never enough for them." She looked away, ashamed of how small her voice sounded. "I can't forget it, even here." Eli was silent for a long moment. Then he said, "The folks who did that to you, tribe or not, don't get to decide who you are. You're here now. You choose what comes next." He put a hand on her shoulder, not heavy, just grounding. "You belong as much as anyone, Ada. Maybe more." His words were simple, but something inside Ada shifted. She wasn't sure she believed it yet, but she wanted to. For the first time, that felt like enough. That week, Ada asked Eli if she could ride. "I know horses," she insisted. "I was never allowed near them back home, but I watched, I learned." Eli raised an eyebrow but didn't question her further. He led her to the barn and showed her the youngest horse, a paint gelding named Jasper. "He's fast but gentle, good for learning." Her first ride was awkward. She slid in the saddle, clutched the reins too tight, and felt every bump in the trail, but Eli rode beside her, patient and encouraging. "Loosen up," he'd call. "Let the horse move under you." Ada grit her teeth and tried again and again, determined not to be the burden everyone had told her she'd always be. By the third morning, something clicked. She stopped fighting Jasper and started riding with him, feeling the rhythm in her bones, the thrill in her chest. Eli watched, grinning. "Told you. Born to ride, that's what you are." For the first time, Ada believed it herself. Still, not everyone in the valley was as welcoming as Eli or the sheriff. One afternoon, as Ada returned from gathering eggs, she spotted two men at the edge of the fence line, neighbors from the next property over. Their faces were pinched with suspicion, eyes darting from her broad shoulders to the wide curve of her hips. "That her," one whispered, not quite quietly enough. "The one the Apache sold?" The other snorted. "Looks like she could eat us out of house and home." Ada's fists clenched around the basket, but she kept her head high and walked past without a word. When she told Eli that night, his jaw set hard. "You let me handle them. This ranch, our ranch, isn't their concern." Ada felt something unfamiliar then. Pride, not in herself, but in what she and Eli were building together. They weren't family, not by blood, but every day, the space between them filled with something warmer, steadier, something that might one day become home. Still, trouble simmered beneath the surface. The men who had come for Ada the first night had not returned, but rumors reached the ranch all the same. Talk of debts, of troublemakers stirring things up in the valley, of old grudges that never seemed to die. Eli took to sleeping with the rifle close at hand, and Ada learned to keep an oil lamp burning by her bed just in case. And one evening, as they ate dinner in the quiet kitchen, the sound of horses on the road sent both their hearts pounding. Ada stood. Eli reached for the rifle, and outside the world held its breath, waiting to see if their fragile peace would shatter once more. The knock on the door was firm, measured, too calm to be a threat, but still enough to set Ada's nerves jangling. Eli nodded for her to stay back, cradling the rifle in one hand as he opened the door just a crack. On the porch stood Sheriff Vaughn, hat in hand, his brow furrowed beneath a mess of wind-blown gray hair. "Evening, Eli. Sorry to trouble you." His voice was steady, but his eyes flickered to Ada, who stood in the shadow of the kitchen. "No trouble, Sheriff. You're always welcome here," Eli replied, easing the door wider. Sheriff Vaughn stepped inside, boots scuffing on the worn floorboards. "I heard talk in town, nothing good. Some folks have been asking questions, poking around where they shouldn't. You know how word spreads, especially with strangers." His gaze landed gently on Ada, not judging, but heavy with the weight of concern. Ada felt her breath tighten, shame threatening to rise, but she refused to shrink from his stare. "If there's trouble, I can leave," she said, voice low but steady. "I won't bring danger on your house." Eli's jaw hardened. "No one's sending you anywhere. This is your home too, now." He looked at the sheriff, voice firm. "We're not hiding. We're just living like anyone else." Sheriff Vaughn nodded, his mouth a thin, tired line. "Didn't figure you would, Eli. But it might get harder before it gets easier. I'm not saying this to scare you, Ada. Just want you to be ready." He hesitated, then said quietly, "You've got more friends here than you think." He stayed for a cup of coffee, sharing quiet stories about the valley, about hard winters and lost cattle, about the times when neighbors put aside their differences to help one another survive. Ada listened closely, searching his words for some sign of hope. Before he left, he turned to her and said, "My wife, she never fit in easy either. Not at first. Sometimes, it's the people who stand out that end up holding a place together." After the sheriff left, Ada and Eli sat in silence, the kitchen suddenly vast and uncertain. The tension in the air felt heavier than before, but also clearer, as if the sheriff's visit had named the danger instead of letting it fester. Eli poured 2 mugs of strong tea and passed one to Ada. "We can't control what they say," he murmured, "but we can control how we answer." Ada nodded, the resolve in her chest settling deeper. "I won't run," she said, her voice soft but fierce. "Not this time." The next days were a strange mix of calm and anxiety. Work continued. The horses needed feeding, the fences needed patching, but Ada felt eyes on her, even when alone in the field or hanging laundry on the line. She caught sight of riders on the ridge now and then, strangers moving slow, watching the ranch from a distance before disappearing into the hills. Eli took to double-checking the locks each night and moved his rifle closer to his bed. Despite the mounting pressure, Ada refused to cower. She rode Jasper daily, growing more skilled and confident. Each ride another step toward reclaiming herself. She started fixing things around the ranch on her own, patching a leaky roof, mending torn curtains, even baking a loaf of bread that, while burnt at the edges, made Eli laugh out loud for the first time in days. "You're braver than I am, trying to eat that," he joked, and the tension melted just enough for Ada to smile. One afternoon, as Ada returned from the pasture, she spotted a figure near the edge of the property. An older woman, stooped with age, her dress faded but neat. Ada hesitated, uncertain, but the woman waved her closer. "You must be Ada," the woman said, her voice kind but sharp. "I'm Martha. Used to know Eli's mother. God rest her. Folks in town say all sorts of things, but I like to see with my own eyes." Ada studied Martha's face, unsure if she was friend or foe. "And what do you see?" Ada asked quietly. Martha smiled, slow and genuine. "I see a girl who's earned her place, and I see a ranch that's better for having you in it. Don't let the cowards make you small, child. This land's always belonged to those with grit." She pressed a small parcel into Ada's hand, fresh cornbread, still warm. "You stand tall here. Folks talk less when their mouths are full." That night, Eli found Ada on the porch, the parcel beside her, the words from Martha still echoing in her mind. "You ever wish you'd stayed alone?" Ada asked, her voice trembling at the edges. Eli shook his head. "Not for a minute. Ranch was never alive until you came." He sat beside her, their shoulders nearly touching. Let them talk. We'll show them what family really means. Ada looked out into the night, feeling something unfamiliar. Hope, fragile and stubborn, blooming inside her. She knew there were battles still ahead, but with Eli beside her and the ranch growing more like home each day, she felt stronger than ever. Yet just as the evening settled into peace, a shadow passed by the window, a silhouette neither of them recognized, moving quickly across the yard. Ada and Eli both stood, hearts pounding, as the ranch plunged into a new, uncertain silence. The following morning broke with a tense stillness, the kind that settles over the land before a storm. Ada woke early, her sleep fractured by strange dreams, shadows flickering at the window, voices she couldn't understand whispering through the darkness. She shook off the unease and dressed quickly, determined not to let fear rule her day. Yet as she stepped outside, the air felt different, sharper, charged, as if the ranch itself were holding its breath. Eli was already in the barn, tending to the horses. His face was drawn, eyes shadowed with worry he tried to hide. "Someone was out there last night," he said in a low voice, not looking up. "Saw tracks near the north fence. Boot prints. Deep, heavy man, I'd say. Maybe more than one." Ada's heart pounded. "Do you think they'll come back?" she asked, gripping the edge of her shawl. Eli shrugged, jaw set. "If they're looking for trouble, they'll find we're ready." He met her gaze, something steely in his eyes. "We've been through worse, Ada. We won't run now." She nodded, drawing courage from his steadiness. The day unfolded with a sense of forced normalcy. Ada repaired harness straps and watered the garden, her mind looping back to the shadow at the window, to the possibility of men out there with cruel intentions. She tried to focus on the work. There was always work. But she found herself glancing toward the hills, watching for movement. By noon, word reached the ranch. One of the ranch hands, a lanky youth named Thomas, had spotted strangers near the creek, watching the house from afar. "3 of them," he reported, voice shaky. "Didn't look like cattlemen. One had a rifle slung low. They didn't say nothing, just stood there. Then they disappeared back into the trees." Eli listened, eyes narrowing. "We keep close for now. Lock up early. Thomas, you and Benny sleep in the bunkhouse. Keep the lanterns burning all night. Ada, you stay inside once the sun's down." But Ada felt a twist of defiance in her chest. "I won't hide," she said, voice quiet but fierce. "I spent too much of my life pretending to be smaller than I am. I won't do it anymore, not for them." Eli almost smiled, pride flickering in his tired face. "I know, but sometimes staying safe is the bravest thing you can do." That evening, the ranch gathered into its smallest circle. Thomas and Benny double-checked the locks and windows. Eli sat at the table, cleaning his old revolver. Ada busied herself with supper, her hands moving automatically as she listened for every creak and whisper outside. Night fell heavy, the moon veiled by clouds. The only sound was the wind and the faint creak of the barn doors. Hours crawled by. Eli nodded off in his chair, revolver resting in his lap, while Ada kept herself awake by mending a shirt, her mind wandering to old memories, the jeers and sneers of her tribe, the ache of being cast out, the shame she'd carried like a second skin. Suddenly, a sharp bang shattered the silence. Ada froze, needle poised in midair. Eli was up in a flash, wide awake. Another bang, louder, someone pounding on the front door. "Stay back," Eli hissed, moving toward the entry with steady steps. Ada stood just behind him, pulse racing. From outside, a man's voice barked, "Open up. We know she's in there. Ain't right. What you're doing, keeping her here, making folks nervous." Eli's voice was cold steel. "There's no law against offering shelter, and there's no crime in kindness." A murmur of voices outside, more than one man. Thomas and Benny appeared in the hall, holding pitchforks, faces pale but determined. Ada drew a slow breath, planting her feet. She would not cower. "Let me talk to them," she whispered. "Please. If I don't stand for myself now, I never will." Eli hesitated, then nodded. He opened the door a crack. Outside stood 3 men, faces pinched with anger and suspicion. "We don't want trouble," Eli said. "But you won't find any here." One man pointed an accusing finger at Ada. "You don't belong here. This is white man's land. You're bringing shame to his name." Ada stepped forward, voice trembling at first but gaining strength. "You want to call me names? Fine. I've heard worse from my own people, but this ranch is my home now. I work here. I bleed here. I stand beside the man who gave me a chance when nobody else would." The men shifted uneasily. "So you're making things hard for all of us," one grumbled. "We got wives and daughters to think of." Ada held her ground. "Then teach them to judge a person by what they do, not what they look like. I won't leave because you're afraid of something different." A long silence. Finally, one man spat at the ground, muttered a curse, and turned away. The others followed, their bravado shrinking as they retreated into the dark. Eli closed the door, locking it tight. The ranch was still. Ada's legs shook, but she forced herself to breathe and to let the fear pass through her. Eli reached for her hand, gripping it tight. "You stood up. I'm proud of you." Ada managed a weak smile, her heart still pounding. She knew this victory was only the beginning, but for the first time, she believed she had the strength to face what came next. Yet, as dawn neared, a cold realization crept in. People like those men rarely gave up so easily. And out there, in the growing light, the next test was already gathering. The following days unfolded with a tension that seemed woven into every shadow and gust of wind. Ada carried on with her chores, outwardly unchanged, but inside she lived in a state of constant alert. Each morning, she scanned the hills for any sign of movement, any glint of a rifle or the shimmer of a watchful eye. She saw nothing, but the memory of those men's faces haunted her, their threat lingering like the scent of smoke long after a fire. Eli doubled the security of the ranch. He reinforced the fences, checked every lock, and kept his rifle within arm's reach no matter where he was. The ranch hands worked in pairs, always looking over their shoulders, never straying too far from the main house. At night, Ada lay awake listening to every creak of the walls, every sigh of the wind, telling herself she would not be afraid. She would not let her life shrink to the size of her fears. But the unease was not only external. Ada felt it within herself too, an old battle resurfacing. Memories of her tribe, of being singled out and ridiculed for her body, for her voice, for every way she was different, pressed in on her. The words thrown at her now were different, but the sting was the same. Only now she had something worth defending, a home, a purpose, a place she belonged. Eli noticed the shadows in her eyes, the way she paused at windows or lingered a moment too long at the door before stepping outside. He didn't pressure her to talk Ikaustawais, but he was there in small ways, placing a mug of coffee in her hands in the morning, asking for her opinion on the horses, quietly reminding her that this was her land too. One afternoon, as the sun beat down over the fields, Ada took a walk to the far pasture to check on a young colt. The walk was meant to clear her head, but as she reached the edge of the property, she heard the distant thump of hooves, multiple horses, approaching at speed. She ducked behind a clump of mesquite and watched, her heart pounding. 3 riders appeared on the horizon, the same men from before, their faces grim with purpose. They stopped just beyond the fence line, dismounted, and began talking in low voices, glancing toward the ranch house. Ada pressed herself lower in the grass, willing herself to disappear. She could see their weapons clearly now, rifles and pistols, glinting in the sun. She stayed hidden until they left, then ran all the way back to the house, breathless and shaken. Bursting into the kitchen, she found Eli and the ranch hands. "They're back," she gasped. "They were watching, out by the north pasture. They're planning something. I know it." Eli's jaw clenched. He sent Thomas and Benny to keep watch, and instructed Ada to stay inside until he said otherwise. But Ada's mind spun with fear and frustration. Hiding was not in her nature anymore. She remembered the promise she had made to herself, the vow to never shrink again. If trouble was coming, she wanted to face it on her feet. That evening, as the sun dipped behind the hills, a strange silence settled over the ranch. The animals were restless. Even the horses seemed to sense something was wrong, stamping and snorting in their stalls. Eli moved through the house, checking every window, his face set and grim. Suddenly, The barking of the ranch dogs shattered the calm. Eli rushed outside, rifle at the ready, with Ada close behind him. From the darkness beyond the yard, shouts erupted, harsh, angry voices demanding Ada be sent out to them, that she leave their town, their lives, their sense of order. Eli fired a warning shot into the air. "This is private land," he called out. "You've got no right to trespass, and you'll find no welcome here." For a moment, there was only the echo of the gunshot. Then the men retreated into the night, their threats trailing after them like poison. Inside, Ada slumped against the wall, shaking with adrenaline and fear. Eli gathered her into his arms, holding her close. "I won't let them hurt you," he whispered. "No matter what, you're not alone." But Ada knew better than to trust in promises. Fear was not so easily banished. She realized that the fight for her place in this world would not be won in a single night, or with a single act of courage. It would be a daily struggle, a test of will, of faith, of love. In the days that followed, Ada began to change. She moved with a new purpose, refusing to hide or shrink away. She greeted the ranch hands each morning with a steady voice, tended to the animals as she always had, and stood beside Eli at every meal. She forced herself to walk the property, to show herself in plain view, daring anyone watching to see her not as a victim, but as a woman who would not be broken. The tension never left entirely, but the mood on the ranch began to shift. The hands started to laugh again, to joke, to plan for the coming harvest. Ada felt her own spirit returning, stronger than before, hardened perhaps, but unyielding. One evening, as she stood watching the sunset bleed across the sky, Eli joined her, silent for a moment. "You know," he said, "I used to think I was saving you. But I see now you saved me too." Ada turned to him, her heart swelling with a hope she hadn't dared to feel in years. For the first time, she truly believed that she belonged. Yet, as the night settled over the ranch, neither of them saw the shadow slipping through the far fence, an intruder with vengeance on his mind. The following morning dawned tense and quiet, the air sharp with the promise of trouble. Ada woke early, her sleep fractured by uneasy dreams, and moved silently through the kitchen, setting water to boil and gathering bread for breakfast. She could feel the change in the house, Eli's rifle already leaning by the door, the ranch hands moving with a wariness that had settled into their bones. Outside, the sky was washed pale blue, streaked with clouds, but the world felt strangely still. As she poured coffee into tin mugs, Eli stepped inside, boots caked with dust, his face drawn and tired. "Tracks," he said quietly. "Someone came through the lower field last night. I don't think they got close, but I saw where the wire was pushed down." His eyes met hers, and Ada saw the fear there coiled beneath his steady exterior. "I'll go with you," she said, her voice stronger than she felt. Eli nodded, not arguing. He knew better than to try and shelter her now. She was part of this, every bit as much as he was. Together they walked the perimeter of the ranch, Ada clutching a small pistol Eli had pressed into her hands months earlier, her finger resting along the side just as he'd taught her. They moved through the tall grass and scrub, past the corrals and along the creek where deer often came to drink. The ranch was alive with ordinary sounds, birds, the whicker of horses, the distant bark of a dog, but Ada's mind stayed fixed on what might be lurking beyond sight. They reached the far fence and found the wire sagging, dirt scuffed with the unmistakable marks of boots. "He was here," Eli said, crouching to examine the ground. "Only one set of prints, but he wasn't in any hurry. Whoever it was took their time." Ada's heart hammered. "Will he come back?" Eli straightened, jaw tight. "If he's watching, he wants us scared, wants us to know he can get close." They repaired the fence, hands working quickly and in silence, then headed back to the house. Ada kept her eyes on the hills, watching for movement, scanning the shadows beneath the cottonwoods. She would not be frightened off her own land. She would not let fear decide her steps. As the day unfolded, a strange calm descended over the ranch. Chores continued, feeding livestock, checking water, tending the garden, but every sound made Ada flinch. Every movement at the edge of her vision sent her nerves sparking. The ranch hands noticed too, keeping their rifles propped close, working in twos, pausing often to survey the land. Late that afternoon, while Ada was collecting eggs from the chicken coop, she heard the dogs bark, a frantic, urgent yelp. She hurried outside to see Thomas running up from the south field, his face pale. "Ryder coming," he called, voice tight. "Fast, straight up the road." Ada rushed to the porch as Eli emerged, rifle ready. Dust spiraled on the horizon, a lone horse and rider pounding toward the ranch. Ada's stomach dropped. This was no visitor. The tension crackled in the air as the man pulled his horse up hard in front of the house, eyes blazing with something wild and desperate. He was one of the men from the earlier threats, but this time his anger was stripped bare, no longer masked by bravado. "I told you people," he spat. "You bring one of them onto your land, you curse all of us. You think you can just take what's ours and no one's going to stop you." Eli's grip tightened on his rifle. "You're trespassing. Leave now, or you won't get another warning." The man sneered, spittle flying. "I'm warning you, cowboy. You think you can hide behind that gun forever? There's more coming. Whole town's behind me this time. She don't belong here, and neither do you if you're with her." Ada stepped forward before Eli could answer, her voice clear and steady. "This is my home now. I won't leave it. Not for you, not for anyone. If you want me gone, you'll have to carry me out yourself." For a moment, the man looked stunned. Then his face twisted in contempt. "You're making a mistake," he growled. "All of you. You'll see what happens." He wheeled his horse and thundered away, dust swirling in his wake. Eli exhaled slowly, the tension in his shoulders visible. "It's not over," he said softly. "No," Ada agreed, her own resolve burning in her chest. "But I'm not running." That night, they fortified the house as best they could, barricading windows, checking locks, keeping weapons close. The ranch hands gathered in the main room, grim but determined. "Whatever comes," Eli said, "we face it together. Nobody runs, nobody hides. We built this place, and we'll defend it." Ada stood at the window, watching the moon rise over the hills. She felt fear, yes, but beneath it there was something fiercer. Pride, belonging, the stubborn refusal to surrender. For the first time in her life, she was fighting not just for herself, but for something larger, for family, for home, for the right to exist as she was. Outside, the darkness thickened, and somewhere in the distance, she heard the faint echo of hoofbeats, more riders gathering high, more trouble brewing. But inside, surrounded by people who had chosen her and whom she had chosen in return, Ada straightened her back and breathed in the night. She would not break. Whatever storm came, she would meet it head-on, side by side with those who had given her a reason to stand. As the fire flickered and shadows danced along the walls, a sense of calm settled over her. This was what it meant to belong. This was what it meant to fight for your place. And as the first shots rang out in the dark, Ada was ready. The first shots cracked through the night like lightning, sharp and startling, splintering the tense silence of the ranch. Ada flinched instinctively, her heart racing, but her hands did not tremble as she reached for her pistol. Eli and the ranch hands took up defensive positions, one by the door, another at the window. Others crouched low behind furniture, every eye alert and every muscle taut. Shadows shifted along the porch outside. The voices of men, 3, maybe 4, barked orders and curses from the dark. "They're here," Thomas hissed, peering out a crack in the shutter. "Looks like they're trying to circle the house." Ada's mind sharpened, fear crystallizing into a hard focus she had never known before. She pressed her back against the wall, breathing steady, eyes locked on the front door where Eli knelt with his rifle aimed. Each passing second stretched long and thin, measured only by the sound of footsteps crunching gravel, the low rustle of wind through grass, the soft whimpering of a colt in the barn. A stone crashed through the window above the sink, shattering glass onto the floor. Ada ducked as a voice outside called, "We're not leaving till you send her out. Give us what's ours and nobody else gets hurt." Eli didn't move, didn't even blink. "You want something from me, you come and take it," he called back, his tone iron. Silence answered, thick and menacing. Then came a new volley. This time, the smack of bullets into wood, thudding through the walls. Ada's pulse thundered in her ears. She crawled across the floor, grabbing the spare rifle from beneath the bench, and took up position near the window, watching for movement. One of the men, braver than the others or perhaps more desperate, darted toward the porch and had a shotgun gripped in both hands. Ada saw his outline in the moonlight, shoulders hunched and moving fast. Without thinking, she squeezed the trigger, the rifle's report echoing across the yard. The man stumbled, cursing, and disappeared behind the water trough. "They're getting bolder," Thomas muttered, firing his own shot into the dark. A tense standoff followed, minutes ticking by with only the sound of boots scuffing, the low exchange of whispers, and the occasional nervous horse in the paddock. Ada's arms began to ache, but she forced herself to hold steady. This was not just a battle for survival, but a fight for her place, for the right to claim a future. A sudden pounding at the back door jolted her. Eli spun around, signaling for two of the men to cover him while he crept toward the sound. Ada gripped her pistol tighter, lips pressed into a line. The pounding ceased abruptly. Then a voice, low and breathless, "Please, don't shoot, I'm not with them." Ada frowned, glancing to Eli. He nodded, rifle raised, and eased the door open a crack. A young boy, no older than 16, stood trembling in the shadows, hands raised in surrender. His face was streaked with dirt and tears. "I swear, I didn't know what they planned. They said it was just a warning. I don't want to be part of this." Eli pulled him inside, bolted the door behind him. The boy collapsed on the floor, sobbing. Ada's resolve hardened. These men outside weren't just strangers. They were desperate, reckless, and now their grip on control was slipping. "They're lighting torches," Thomas warned from the front. Ada's stomach twisted. Fire could ruin everything. "We can't let them get close," Eli said quietly. "They set the barn alight. We lose it all." Ada made a decision before she realized she'd moved, grabbing a lantern and slipping out the back door with Eli on her heels. The night air bit cold as they crept along the side of the house, staying low behind barrels and feed sacks. Flames flickered at the edge of the yard. Two men crouched with torches, ready to set the hay bales ablaze. Eli raised his rifle and fired a warning shot over their heads. "Drop it," he roared. Startled, the men scattered, dropping the torches and fleeing into the dark. Ada rushed forward, stamping out embers with her boots, heart pounding in her throat. The barn was safer for now, but the threat hadn't passed. Back inside, the others greeted them with relief and anxious questions. Ada shook her head. "They'll be back, maybe with more next time." "We stand," Eli said simply. "No matter how many times." The standoff stretched deep into the night, each side waiting for the other to break. But the attackers, shaken by the rancher's resolve and the boy's defection, began to lose nerve. By dawn, only silence remained. The cowards had slipped away in the darkness, leaving behind smoldering torches and scattered footprints. Ada collapsed into a chair, shaking with exhaustion but filled with something fiercer than fear: triumph. The ranch still stood. The people she cared for were safe, and for the first time, she believed she had truly earned her place here, not just as someone taken in, but as someone who had fought, endured, and belonged. The sun crested the horizon, casting golden light over the battered ranch. Ada stood by the porch, arms wrapped around herself, watching the first rays spill across the field. The night's violence still echoed in her body. Her arms ached, her mind reeled with every close call and every sharp sound. But the ranch had survived. She had survived. And so had the life she was only just beginning to believe was hers. Inside, Eli brewed strong coffee over the stove, his face etched with fatigue but softened by something like pride. Thomas and the other hands quietly tended to the damage, boarding up the shot-out windows, sweeping away broken glass, and gathering the scattered shell casings from the yard. No one spoke much, but the way they worked, side by side, felt different, like a family that had just come through a trial by fire and come out the other side stronger, not broken. Ada poured herself a mug, her fingers trembling slightly, and went to check the barn. The animals were restless but unharmed. The colt nuzzled her hand, eyes wide, seeking comfort. She stroked its neck, whispering reassurance, realizing just how deeply she cared for these creatures now. They weren't just animals, they were part of her world, a world she'd been told she'd never belong to. Back at the house, the young boy who'd surrendered was sitting at the kitchen table, head bowed, hands still shaking. Eli set a plate of bread and beans in front of him and sat across with a stern but gentle look. "You could have hurt a lot of people last night," Eli said, voice low, "but you chose to do the right thing when it counted." The boy nodded, eyes glistening. "I'm sorry. I didn't have anywhere else to go. They promised me a share. I didn't think—" Eli nodded, understanding more than he said. "Everyone gets a choice. You made yours." Ada stood in the doorway, watching the exchange. She knew what it felt like to be desperate, to want to belong, to grasp at any thread of hope, no matter how frayed. She knelt beside the boy and placed a comforting hand on his shoulder. "You can stay," she said quietly. "Help around the ranch. Earn your keep, the right way." For the first time, the boy looked up at her, surprised. Ada smiled, seeing herself in his fear, his longing, his relief. Eli met Ada's eyes and nodded his agreement. "We take care of our own here." The words settled over the kitchen like a blessing. Ada felt their weight, their promise. This was a home that was built on choice, not chance, on action, not pity. Over the next days, life slowly returned to its rhythm. The damage from the attack was mended, the hands worked the fields, and Ada found herself falling into a new routine, one not marked by fear or expectation, but by trust and purpose. Every evening, she rode out with Eli to check the fences, her body strong and sure atop the horse. The land stretched out before them, wild and beautiful. Eli would point out changes, a coyote trail here, a fresh patch of grass there, and Ada listened, learning to see the ranch through his eyes. Sometimes, when the work was done, they would sit on the porch as the sun dipped low, not speaking, simply sharing the quiet. The silence between them was no longer uncertain, no longer filled with questions about her worth or her place. It was a peace born of mutual respect, of trials faced and overcome together. One evening, as Ada was brushing the colt in the barn, Eli approached her quietly. He watched her work for a long moment before speaking. "You did good," he said softly. "You didn't run, didn't break." Ada paused, the brush still in her hand. She turned to face him, meeting his eyes without hesitation. "I didn't know I could," she replied, her voice steady. "Not until you gave me a reason." He smiled, the corners of his eyes crinkling. "You've always had it in you. I just saw it before you did." They stood in silence, the warmth between them growing, settling. Ada realized that for the first time in her life, she was not surviving. She was living, building, belonging. Word of the attack spread through the nearby town, and with it, stories of the rancher's resilience and of the woman who stood by his side. No one called her an outsider now. No one whispered about her being too wild or too much. They spoke instead of her courage, her determination, her heart. Some even came to her for advice, about horses, about the land, about finding a place to stand when the world pushed back. Ada listened, offered what she could, and never forgot what it felt like to be the one on the outside looking in. As summer deepened, the ranch flourished. New grass grew thick and green. The hands laughed more often, their work lighter. Ada's laughter, once rare, became a regular sound in the house, warm and contagious. And every so often, she would stand alone in the fields at dusk, watching the sky burn pink and gold, and whisper a quiet thank you to the land, to Eli, and to herself, for not giving up, for daring to want more, for proving that even someone the world tried to cast aside could find not just a home, but a family, a purpose, and a future. The sky over the ranch that evening was bruised with rolling clouds, painted gold and violet by the sinking sun, a sky that promised rain after months of parched silence. Inside the house, Ada's hands were shaking as she carefully cleaned the old silver comb Clay had left for her on the dresser, the one that had belonged to his mother. Every gesture tonight felt loaded, every look brimming with things neither of them had ever spoken aloud. For weeks, Ada had sensed something building between them, a tension neither hostile nor easy, but charged with the silent question of belonging. She wondered if she could ever truly belong anywhere, or if the desert wind would always tug at her bones, whispering that she was meant only to survive, not to be chosen. Clay stood by the open doorway, watching the first streaks of lightning fracture the horizon. His hat in his hands, jaw set as if steeling himself for a storm inside as much as out. The ranch had weathered worse than wind, but tonight it was something else that threatened to shake the walls. Outside, the cattle moved restlessly, feeling the coming rain. Inside, Ada moved to close the shutters, her body slow but sure, her back no longer bent in shame, but straight with new resolve. They sat together in the kitchen, listening to the distant thunder. Clay poured them both a cup of coffee, hands rough but careful, pushing the cup toward her across the scarred table. Ada took it, her fingers brushing his. For a moment, neither spoke. It was Clay who finally broke the silence, voice thick. "Ada, you ever think about leaving? Going somewhere softer, where no one remembers how you came here?" His words hung between them, the air taut with old grief and new hope. Ada set her cup down, steady now. "I spent 60 years doing what I was told, surviving. I never thought I'd stay anywhere, not until someone looked at me and saw more than what was lost." She looked at him then, eyes shining in the dim light. "But you offered me more than a roof or a meal. You offered me a place to be someone again, not just a bride left in the desert, a woman who gets to choose." A gust of wind rattled the windows, the first drops of rain pattering on the roof. Clay reached across the table, his calloused hand covering hers. "I don't care how you got here, Ada, or what they called you before. I care what you want now. I care about who you are when the world stops looking." His voice trembled, bare and honest. "You could leave, right now, and I'd understand, but I'd miss you every day." For a long heartbeat, Ada didn't move. Then she pulled her hand from beneath his, only to rise from her chair and come to stand before him, tall and straight and tired but unbroken. "You are the first man who ever gave me the choice to stay," she said, "and that means more than love. It means I am seen." The thunder cracked louder, rattling the panes, but neither of them flinched. Clay rose slowly, eyes never leaving hers. He reached for her, but not to pull or claim, just to stand with her, shoulder to shoulder, old wounds and new courage meeting in the hush. "You're not just my guest here, Ada," he said, voice soft. "You're my partner. If you stay, this ranch is yours too. You decide what tomorrow looks like." Tears sprang to Ada's eyes, hot, silent, different from all those shed in secret over a lifetime. For once, she wasn't crying out of loss, but out of the overwhelming relief of finally being enough. The storm raged outside, but in the kitchen, something steadier took root. Ada lifted her chin, letting him see all of her, age, scars, fear, and fierce hope. "I've never wanted a home until now," she admitted. "But if you'll have me, I'd like to build one here, with you." Her voice was thin, but unshakable. "I want to belong." Clay smiled then, the kind of smile that softened the hardest years. He reached up and cupped her cheek, thumb brushing away the rain of her tears. "Welcome home, Ada." The thunder rolled on, echoing through the house, but inside, they stood together, two souls battered by a world quick to discard those who didn't fit. Tonight, they chose each other, not for what was owed or expected, but because they both knew what it meant to be left behind, and what it meant to finally be found. Outside, the rain began to pour in earnest, drumming steady on the tin roof, washing the dust from the yard. The parched ground drank it up, as if grateful for every drop. And in that storm, Ada and Clay stood side by side, hands linked, hearts steady, no longer waiting for life to begin, but building it together, one day at a time. And as the dawn crept slow and bright through the storm's fading wake, the world outside seemed changed, greener, softer, more forgiving. For the first time, Ada stepped into the morning not as someone left behind, but as someone chosen, someone home. The storm had passed by dawn, leaving the ranch bathed in the cool hush of renewal. Dew clung to every blade of grass, and the air was thick with the scent of wet earth and wild sage. Ada woke before Clay, her body aching but light, as if the old weight she'd carried for so many years had finally washed away with the rain. She stood by the open door, letting the first rays of sunlight warm her face, listening to the distant lowing of cattle and the gentle clatter of the windmill spinning to life again. She glanced back at Clay, who was still asleep in the battered armchair, his hat tipped low over his eyes, a faint smile on his lips. The sight filled her with a peace she'd never known, a sense that for once her story wasn't ending with survival, but beginning with something chosen, something earned. All the labels others had placed on her, too old, too much, not enough, no longer held power in this new light. Here, in this place she never expected to belong, she had found both acceptance and purpose. Ada moved quietly through the kitchen, making coffee as the sunlight crept across the floorboards. She set 2 cups on the table, hands steady, then opened the door to the morning, breathing in the promise of another day. The ranch, once silent and empty, now thrummed with life. Birds chattering in the eaves, the old dog stretching in the yard, horses shaking off sleep in the pasture. Every corner seemed touched by her presence, changed not by grand gestures, but by the slow, steady work of living. When Clay finally stirred, he found Ada standing outside, watching the world come alive. He joined her, and together they walked the land side by side. They checked the fences, fed the animals, shared quiet laughter as the sun rose higher, burning away the last chill of the night. With every step, Ada felt herself growing into her place here, not as a guest or a burden, but as a partner, someone whose hands shaped the day as much as Clay's did. As weeks turned to months, Ada's spirit transformed the ranch. She planted wildflowers along the path to the barn, their colors bright and defiant against the dusty earth. She repaired old fences, her strong arms and patient effort leaving their mark on every post and rail. She cooked meals that filled the house with warmth, her laughter echoing in the kitchen, drawing Clay in from the fields just to hear it. Together, they made the house into a home. Not perfect, not without struggle, but alive in ways neither had ever known. The neighbors noticed, of course. At first, some stared, whispered behind their hands, curious about the new life Ada had built, out of the ashes of what others called failure. Some judged, unable to see past her age or the years spent in exile, but over time, even the most skeptical came to respect her resilience, her wisdom, her kindness. Children brought her wildflowers. Widows came to her for advice. Ranchers nodded in greeting when she rode past on Clay's old mare. One evening, as the summer air shimmered with cicadas and the horizon burned orange with sunset, Clay took Ada's hand in the porch swing and held it tight. "Never thought I'd find a family at 60, he said softly, eyes shining. "Never thought I'd find home in another soul." Ada leaned against him, her heart full. "I'm not the woman I was when I arrived here," she whispered. "You gave me space to become more, to belong. The years ahead wouldn't be easy. The land would test them, as it always had. There would be droughts and storms, broken fences and sleepless nights, but Ada no longer faced them alone. And in the quiet moments between work and rest, she would sometimes look at her hands, rough and calloused but steady, and know they'd shaped something lasting, a love that outlasted old wounds, a home that outgrew every rejection. Sometimes, Ada would walk the edge of the property at dawn, watching the mist rise from the ground, and remember the woman she'd been the day she was left in the desert, afraid, discarded, invisible. Now she moved with purpose, every step a testament to what could bloom when a soul was seen, welcomed, and allowed to thrive. If you've watched this far, let Ada's story remind you that it's never too late to find your place in the world, no matter what you've survived or how many times you've been cast aside. Home isn't just a roof or a patch of land. It's the people who see you, who choose you, who give you the space to become more than your past. If this story touched you, please like, share, and subscribe for more tales of resilience, redemption, and the quiet power of choosing hope over despair. Let us know in the comments. Have you ever found a home where you least expected it, or met someone who saw you for who you truly are? Until next time, remember, no matter your age, your scars, or your story, you are never too late for a new beginning. And sometimes, the family you find along the way is the one you needed all along. Watch our next video for another true-hearted journey, because every soul deserves to be seen.